thank you so much for tuning into my YouTube channel. I wanted to share my birth story with you guys today. First of all, I just wanted to quickly go over a few things in my third trimester because I really wanted to get around to doing a video and I didn't. In that period of time, I moved into our home. I was setting up his room and I also got really sick. So I was sick for about 2 weeks with the flu. The whole pregnancy I was totally fine. I managed to train, exercising, eating well, on top of everything, except for 2 weeks I was completely knocked out, and that was at about 35 weeks through to 36 weeks. So after that, I slowly returned to exercise. I was still weight training 3 times a week. The only time I stopped was in my 39th week. I actually pulled back from going to the gym and I just did walks instead. So I thought, I don't know, I just really wasn't kind of feeling like I wanted to train. My body was really sore and I could kind of tell that the baby was coming. So I thought it was time just to kind of get out of the gym. But anyway, so that was my third trimester, summed up really short. And look, my pregnancy was amazing. I enjoyed every minute of it, and I was so thankful to be able to exercise and everything and just feel so good through my whole pregnancy. All up, I put on just under 15 kilos for my pregnancy. I always knew that I would get to the 15 kilo mark. I just had that kind of feeling. And look, I'm really happy with that. So far, this is day 11 and I've already lost half of that, and that's through doing nothing at all, just probably the breastfeeding side of things. So yeah, I'm pretty happy. However, I will be out of the gym for probably 6 weeks plus, and I will tell you why. So first of all, I'll just get started with my birth story now. So I went into labor on Saturday last week, the week before, and that was like at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when I started getting my contractions, and I was getting like every 10 minutes I was getting a contraction, and then that obviously kind of sped up from there. I didn't sleep for 2 nights, so I went into labor on the Saturday. I was actually 40 weeks on the Sunday, so I went into labor on 39 weeks and 6 days. Started getting contractions, which, you know, started off pretty easy to begin with, as it just progressed through the night. The next day, that's when I told my midwife that they were getting more frequent, because I was getting them twice every 10 minutes. And they were getting pretty full on by the next day. I bought a new iPhone 10 that managed to die on me, so I actually had no way of contacting people or sharing anything whatsoever. But to be honest, at that point in time, I really didn't want to say anything to anyone because I was kind of just riding through it all. So in that period of time, on the Saturday, I went and I saw my midwife down at the family birthing centre. In total, over those 2 days, over Sunday, and Monday, I visited her 4 times, and she sent me back home because I wasn't in active labor. So I hadn't dilated past 3 centimeters. So I pretty much was just riding it out. She really wanted me to get some rest, but I was struggling with that because the contractions were full on. And, you know, every 10 minutes for those 2 days in total. And I didn't sleep. I slept sitting up on the edge of my bed. I had 1 foot over the side, 1 foot on the bed, holding onto my bedside table and just riding through the contractions when they were happening. So yeah, I did not get any sleep. Only time I got sleep was like through contractions. On the Sunday, I had to sit on a chair with my head on the back of another chair, and I was just riding through the contractions that way. I really got into hypnobirthing through my pregnancy, and I used that through my labor when I was at home, as well as when I went to the family birthing center, and that helped heaps. I felt really, really calm through the whole thing, those whole 2 days. And you know, I felt that it helped so much for me with the hypnobirthing, so I highly recommend that. I felt pretty good, but I was in like a lot of pain, obviously. And finally on the Monday, because I had him Monday night, I had gone, like, I'd got to 3 centimeters dilated. So I then stayed at the family birthing center. And you know, they give you a time period of how you're supposed to progress when you are in labor. We set everything up. I had my birthing pool because I really wanted to have a water birth. So I jumped in that in the second phase, and kind of wrote out the contractions that way. I had my hypnobirthing DVD, well, not DVD, my hypnobirthing CD playing on repeat. So I was listening to that. I was in a very good frame of mind. I felt really positive, even though it had been 2 days by then. I was just writing out the contractions. I was kind of falling asleep at that point, especially in the birthing pool. At one point, I was just like floating on my back and Attila was holding my head and I was falling asleep between those. So I was really, really calm. That's what the point I'm trying to get across to you guys. And I was really thankful to experience that. And I was really, really looking forward to having a natural like water birth. It got to the point where I had been there for 6 hours, and then they gave me another 2 hours in order to progress, and I didn't progress. I stayed at 3 centimeters. I got to 4, and his head, in that time I got examined like 6 times, and his head kept on turning. So at one point his head was in a really good position, and then it kept on turning to the side. So the problem was, and the reason why I wasn't dilating, is because his head wasn't pushing down hard enough on my cervix in order for it to open. So he was being a little bit stubborn. So I wasn't progressing. I got to the point where I was in a lot of pain, and it wasn't really the contractions as such, it was my back. My lower back was just giving in. I obviously had sat up for 2 nights straight. I hadn't laid down. Every time I'd lay down, the contractions were just so full on I could hardly handle it. So my back was just started seizing up. We were trying to get me into really good positions in the birthing pool with my legs open to try to get the baby into a good position, but my back was just seizing up all the time. So yeah, it really got to the point where I just felt like I couldn't really handle it anymore. And that's when obviously I'd gone past the time as well in order for me to progress. And that's when they moved me up into the King Edward Hospital, because that's attached to it. And from there, they gave me an epidural. I couldn't handle it anymore. As much as I tried to stay strong the whole time, I just got to that point. I think at that point in time, I think it'd been like 48 or 50 hours that I had been like in labor, not active labor, but I had been having contractions for, and yeah, I'd kind of just, my body had had enough. So I had the epidural. I felt really like good. Obviously after I'd had that, I was still feeling the contractions. I was really tired. I was almost falling asleep at that point. And they also gave me oxytocin to help to bring on my contractions so they were a bit stronger, in hope that I could still have a natural birth, or a vaginal birth, I should say. And it just didn't work again. His poor little heart couldn't handle it. I think obviously he and I had been through so much. His heart rate kept on dropping really, really low. And sometimes that does happen. Like when you have the epidural, their hearts can drop lower, but his was going, you know, from 140 down to 60, and it was taking too long to climb. So at that point, they decided to pull back on that, so they took that away, but it was still kind of happening. I had an obstetrician come in and she examined me. When she examined me, she told me that I had gone back to 3 centimeters dilated and the baby was too high. They were thinking of, they were going to do a little test where they scrape a little bit, like get a little blood off of the top of his head to make sure that everything was okay and that he was handling things well. But when she saw that I was 3 centimeters, so what happened, my cervix had just swollen up. When they had seen that I was only at that point and he was too far up, she was like, you need to have an emergency cesarean, his heart rate's not coping, it's time to get the baby out. And when I got to that point, like honestly, I didn't mind. Like obviously you have your birth plan and I really wanted a natural water birth. That's really what I wanted with my hypnobirthing. But when it got to that point, I was just ready for him to come. So I had no problem whatsoever with that. Same with my husband and my mum. We all thought that that was definitely the best way to handle things. And look, I am so relieved that they were just amazing. The fact that they allowed me to go as far as I possibly could and with the baby without having intervened, and it just got to that point where I really just needed to get him out and I was ready for him to come then. And I just remember laying on that table and I was just like, Attila, we're going to meet him in 10 minutes. And he was like, what? He thought it was going to take like 3 hours. And I was like, no, it takes 10 minutes. He's going to be here. We finally get to meet him. So after 53 hours, it was just such a relief to finally get to meet this little guy. And it was honestly just the best moment. Whether it had all gone to plan or not, it was still incredible. Just they dropped the sheet for me so we could see him straight away. They obviously checked him over and then they did skin to skin straight away with me as soon as they could, so I was really relieved to have that. The only problem was is that I couldn't actually see him. He was on my chest and I just wanted to see his little face, but obviously once they had stitched me back up again and everything, I finally got to meet him and it was such a surreal experience. And look, I know so many ladies that have gone through exactly the same thing as me, and I'm still so happy with my birth, and it might sound weird, but I'm so thankful that I got to kind of experience sort of the birth that I wanted at the beginning, and I was really proud of myself because I stayed so calm considering how long that was for. And look, I couldn't be prouder, and I just was so thankful to have him there. When I was recovering from the C-section, I was thinking, how do people elect for this? It was pretty painful, like I'm not gonna lie. For me, I only had Panadol and I had like anti-inflammatories because I can't handle like stronger pain meds. They gave me tramadol and I was hallucinating even with a half a dose. So I just had to kind of ride it out with that. Obviously it's hard to walk, and I mean it's probably the same with having a normal labor as well, so the recovery process is a long one. I feel so much better now. It's 11 days and I'm finally starting to feel back to my normal self. I'm probably going to go for a walk today. That'll be the only exercise that I'm doing, and some like pelvic floor exercises and stuff too. But obviously I can't train for the next 6 weeks. But you know what, I don't really care because I am just so happy to be a mum and to have my little boy and to spend time with him. It's been amazing. Sorry, just getting a little bit emotional. But yeah. Sorry, I get a little bit emotional. I'm just so excited to be a mum and to be have my little man. It's just such an incredible experience, and as crazy as it sounds, I can't wait to do it all over again. I'm hoping next time that I'll be able to have the birth that I want, and I can still do that with the community midwifery program, which I went through, which was incredible. I had so much support. So I can still do that with them. However, I am going to try to see a gynecologist just to make sure that it wasn't actually my pelvis that was the problem, because I possibly do have a smaller pelvis, and hence the reason why it was hard for him to kind of get into position. So I think I'd really like to try to find that out first before going through the trauma of a labor and then a cesarean all in one. My back is still a little bit sore. I'm still quite numb through my glutes just from the actual labor itself. I am, like I said before, I feel really good now though. I feel like I'm recovering pretty well. But yeah, the experience, like, honestly was incredible regardless, and I think that all women should feel so empowered to be able to go through a pregnancy and a birth no matter what happens. I hope you guys loved my story, because I love it so much. I'm still just on cloud 9 from everything. Hopefully I didn't leave anything out. I probably did. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and I will speak to you all soon.